Welcome to the Transformer Unicorn Tales. I'm Katie, your ever transforming host. This is a podcast about awesome transformations, food, for thought, and occasionally unicorns. I am so excited that you're here listening to this. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Today we have another very special guest. And today we are going to talk about, I would say, the more available men. Those are the ones who are more in touch with their emotions. And I have a very special guest who can tell us more about this. So, without any further ado, I will let him introduce himself. Hi.
Hi, I'm Simon. I'm from Queensland Sunshine Coast in Australia, and yeah, my story is one of men's mental health. So I'm really looking forward to being here and sharing my story for your audience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Mm, well, we are talking about transformations on the podcast, so I always like to ask my guests, how did you end up here? How did you come up with this idea to help other men? Because usually the story is I was there. Yeah.
Pretty
So
much, I've been there for 30 years or over 30 years. So I'm 39 now, and I guess at the moment, I'll start from where I am at the moment. So at the moment, I'm running a men's mental health therapy business. And the reason I focus on men is because I know how hard it is for guys to talk about mental health. I developed what's called obsessive compulsive disorder at 8 years old, and it remained undiagnosed until I was 28 years old. So it was 20 years that I lived with this largely in silence. And, as the years went on, depression and generalized anxiety came into the mix as well. And then this year, it's been 10 years since I stepped into that doctor's office and said that I think I've got mental health issues, and subsequently got my diagnoses and could trace that back to 8 years old, and start to understand who I was as a person and why I think and behave in the ways that I do. And then I've spent the last 10 years trialing a whole bunch of different things, like different therapies and different therapists. So I've been to counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, you name it, I've done it. And I've trialed a lot of different things like talk therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure response prevention, and even mindfulness. So I found mindfulness through a burnout story, which was like a little detour in my mental health journey, which happened in 2020. And I've used mindfulness actually as I guess a foundation for the work that I do at Mindful Men as well. So I've been there for 30 years and living it, and I'm just passionate about it because growing up, I never had someone to talk about mental health issues. It was, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and talking about mental health wasn't something that you did. To be a boy and to grow up and to be a man was to be masculine and to bottle everything up and just, be hard and tough, and being hard and tough didn't come with talking about your emotions. It was two complete polar opposites. And so like many guys, I bottled it up, and I use things like alcohol for most of my, the end of my teenage years, and most of my adulthood has been using alcohol to kind of numb the thoughts and the pain and all that type of stuff. But as I get a bit older and I've become a dad now and I'm a husband, and I'm starting to look more into the good self-care strategies like exercise and eating right and sleeping properly. Mindfulness is a huge thing for me, and also recognizing that it's okay to be not okay as well. And I think me going into that doctor's office 10 years ago was the first step in that journey to reflect inwards and realize that I wasn't okay, but also realize that it was okay for me to talk about things, because a lot of it was like fear, I guess, of going into the doctor's office and being worried about what they're going to say. Are they going to lock me up? Are they going to inject me with all these types of medications to placate me or anything like that? But it wasn't like that at all. It was actually just people who genuinely just wanted to hear my story and help me through that recovery pathway. so yeah, that's kind of like where why I'm doing what I'm doing is to help other guys to open up, and because I just I knew how hard it was to open up, and I love it. It's something that really makes me jump out of bed in the morning. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So I just want to point out to the ladies, because the ladies and the men on the show have already heard my story. I was also really good at bottling up feelings. So if you're a lady right now, please don't switch off, because this is this is good for anyone. um, and I was just thinking, um, very often, when I have men come to me, um, so I do transformational coaching, and then they come to me with like, I'm going through something and I don't know what to do with it. Um, ladies also, but especially men, they just keep telling me these rational stories, like, I have this choice and this choice, and there's always this moment when they finally access the emotions behind them, and then they go, "Oh yeah, this doesn't feel good," or "Oh yeah, that's actually what feels good and what I want to do." And I wonder if you also had that moment where you went, "Oh yeah, emotions. Hello."
well, it's an interesting one, and I'm glad you talked about ladies as well, because yeah, I'm talking about men's mental health, but a lot of it is applicable to women as well. Like, women experience mental health and mental illness, and men do, children do. Even if you don't identify as male or female, you still experience mental illness. And this might be a good conversation to have for all those partners out there whose husbands or boyfriends or whoever or brothers or dads or uncles or whoever, sons maybe, are experiencing mental illness. So sometimes it's just not. It's you can get maybe something from this from a guy's perspective on how to approach mental illness in the men's space. But so from there, like from actually, I've just forgotten the question. Sorry, Katie.
No, that's okay. Well, I was just gonna say, like, what you're saying is exactly right. Like, even just to have that perspective is so valuable,
Yes.
because the first few times when I was coaching men, I was like, yeah, but how do you feel about this? And I would never get this
Ah,
out of
yes.
them. And I thought, yeah, because with females, we go like, I don't know, I feel so sad. I'm like, it's sometimes it comes either, or we're like, it's there more. And for men, they also
Yeah, yeah.
like barrier, like, I cannot talk about that because I never learned how to, and I don't feel like it's appropriate, or I don't feel like I can. And then once I give them that space, it's like, poof, it's like open. So yeah,
Yeah, so it's
wow.
the aha moment that you're looking for. Yes, I got you now. Sorry, it is 7:30 at the night, and I've just put the kids to bed. So, so for me, the aha moment, there was, I guess, a few different aha moments, and I'll take you back. So, in my early teenage years, mum and dad split up, and me and my little brother. So I've got three brothers. Me and my little brother moved out with mum, and this is where my obsessive compulsive disorder really like went from level 2 or 3 to level 99, and it was just out of control. But I still couldn't talk about it, didn't know how to talk about it. Mental illness wasn't something that we talked about. And with my obsessive compulsive disorder, one of the things that happens for me is every time like we go to bed at night time, I would spend hours checking the house that it's locked up and everything's safe and we're secure, because I felt like an overwhelming need to be the man of the house because I was the oldest boy all of a sudden, even though I was only in my early teens. And so I would check for hours and hours and hours and hours, and this was making me so I was so tired of it, so depressed about it. This is where depression came in as well. I remember one night, like, I put my head on the pillow and I just didn't want to wake up. I just wanted to suffocate in my sleep. I was so tired. I was exhausted from all the checking and the mental processing that comes with mental illness. And then something, I don't know where it came from, but I got this affirmation or something like that came into my mind, and it said, "Simon, the sun will always rise tomorrow." And I don't know where this came from, but I saw this as the sun being a new beacon of hope for each day. No matter how dark today is, tomorrow the sun will always come up and, bring with it new life or new opportunity, new warmth, all these types of things. And I've kind of, and from that moment, I remember picking my head off the pillow because my head was buried deep in there trying not to breathe anymore. And I remember picking my head up off the pillow and just it didn't solve anything like at all, but it just gave me a glimmer of hope. So this, I guess, the first aha moment that okay, I don't, I can get through this somehow. I'm going to get through this, and then and that was in my early teens. So I'm talking about 13, maybe 14 years old, and
Mhm.
then the next one came probably in my late 20s, just before I went to the doctor. I remember I was drinking a lot. I was really depressed. I was really lonely as well. Like, even though I'd met, I was living with my now wife, but we'd moved interstate from where we were. I didn't know many people. I wasn't going anywhere in my career. I just felt really just down and out. And I remember drinking so much, and my OCD was, pretty hectic as well. My wife said, Simon, you got to start opening up about whatever's going on inside. You're drinking too much, you're pretty miserable, you need to get help. But I pushed back. Initially I pushed back, and I said, no, nothing's wrong with me. I did what every guy would do, or most guys would do. I say, nothing's wrong with me. This is you. It's all you. I'm deflecting the issue onto my partner. And part of me didn't want to go and get help because I had this taboo and shame around medication. I didn't want to go on a medication. I didn't want to be one of those people that would spend every day on medication. But then, so I tried to fix it myself, like a lot of people try to do that don't want to go to therapy, is they try to fix it themselves. So I did more exercise. So I joined a boot camp and I did exercise, and I thought, yep, that's going to fix it. I'm going to have a few weeks off the alcohol, do some exercise, I'll be right. And yeah, that worked for a month or two, but I fell back into old habits pretty quickly. And then it got to a point when I was about 28, so yeah, 10 years ago, where we're having the same discussion, me and my wife, my now wife, and but she was pretty much saying, Simon, you've got so bad now that you're hurting our relationship, and you need to get help, because otherwise I want you might have to leave, you might have to get out the house. And I'm thinking, well, I don't want that. I don't want to end this relationship based on my behavior. And so that was a bit of an aha moment that came as well from being a lot more older and mature, and going, you know what, she's right. I've got to go and get some help. And so off I went and got the help. But then I spent probably the next 7 or 8 years in and out of therapy. Wasn't really gelling with some of the therapists as well. Some of the medications didn't really work how I expected them. I went to my initial lots of therapy. I just expected the therapist to fix me, just like that, like wave a magic wand, and that doesn't happen in the mental health space. You've really got to do some work yourself. So it wasn't until I started studying social work, about 4 years ago, that I got the next lot of aha moments where I could start to understand theories around psychology and psychodynamics and environmental context, and how context impacts us at the individual level, but not, and also the global level. And then through the study of social work, I was just able to broaden my horizon around what mental health is, what mental illness is, and the difference between health and illness, and then how social workers work in this space. And so that really lit a fire into me, going, oh wow, this is really interesting, this is really cool. And I did a few of my essays and projects on OCD and depression and men's mental health, and really got into some research around what it looks like and some of the data around it. So, for example, like in suicide data, men are 75% more likely to die by suicide. And also, that, interestingly, in Australia particularly, that also correlates to family and domestic violence data. So the data suggests 75% of perpetrators of family and domestic violence are men as well. And so what this is telling me is this data and this research and this understanding is that men have a big issue, and a lot of it is from things like patriarchy and toxic masculinity and those social constructs that told me when I was in the 80s and 90s that to be a man was to be a boy who didn't cry and to suck it up and don't talk about emotions and stuff like that. So I could start to see the bigger picture through my social work, and that was a huge aha moment. But then the next one as well, which coincided around the same time, as when I went through burnout. So in 2020, I've got my mental illness that I'm dealing with. I was, getting through my study. I think I was partway through my study. So I was doing my master's degree in the evenings on weekends. During the day, I was doing my 9 to 5 job, still full-time job. We had the two kids. So we had two kids under 3 or 4. And then we had COVID as well. So COVID came along and we had lockdowns for 5, 6, 7 months. And we'd come out of lockdown, then we'd go back in, and we did that a few times over a few years, and then I burnt out. Everything just got too much, and I ended up having to take 4 months off of work to recover. And also, it just coincided with a gap in my study, which is really lucky because I think if it happened any other time, I might have not finished the degree. And then through that process of recovery from burnout, I found mindfulness, and that was through my therapy process. And I started to learn more about mindfulness based practices. And then this was the last big aha moment, was like, guys can tune into their emotions, they can sit in with their emotions, they can do this thing like called mindfulness that sounds really hippie, or it doesn't sound very masculine, but they can use it and they can recover and they can heal. And what I loved about the mindfulness approach was it wasn't just meditation. And I did a bit of meditation. It wasn't just being grateful for things, like that's what we kind of apply to mindfulness, but it was looking at my values and looking at my identity and looking at how I could use those things to set goals that were based on who I want to be, not who I had been living on autopilot for the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years as well. And so that was the last aha moment that I've had. And it was only a relatively recent one, but it just put everything into perspective. And then it helped me, I guess, transform from someone who just had happened to be living with mental illness and a guy just living with mental illness to a guy that was really in tune with why it was happening and where it come from, and then also what I could do for myself, but also other guys as well through Mindful Men. The therapy practice is helping other guys realize it too, and realize that it's okay to talk about things, and we don't have to be this bottled up hard man type image that for generations has been the model for men, and like our dads and grandfathers and their fathers and so forth, that we can change it and we can change it for the next generation. And so I look at my son who's 5, and everything I do now centers around A, trying to heal me, B, trying to heal other guys that come to my practice, but C, also trying to do this for the next generation so that when my son grows up, he realizes that, yeah, I don't have to be this hard nut kind of guy. I can be a softie like dad was, and talk about things and get help if I need to get help. And it's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with me, and there's nothing that, like, it doesn't make me any less of a man to do so as well. So that was those moments when I reflect back on them, and reflection is taking a long time for me to kind of even understand how to do it. And they always say hindsight's a wonderful thing, but when you do look back like that with a clear mind and an understanding of you in a bigger context than just yourself, it can do wonders for you. And yeah, that's why I kind of transitioned from my old career as well to private practice, because I'm just so passionate about doing it and helping other guys do it as well. And for every guy that I help, and I work with women as well, like I learn more about society and the world, because you come across people from a different worldview and different lens. Like you're in Europe, I'm in Australia, so things that you do over there is different to some of the things I do, and understand and perceive the world. And that's really cool. It's really cool to connect in with people like that, and just hear different stories, because then I can further develop my understanding of the world as well, through that shared experience of therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your story and the aha moments of it. And I think one of the most important takeaways is what you also said in the beginning. Even when you have the aha, you go like, "Oh, there's something. I should maybe change something." But
Hmm.
Like, people very often, like, even when they listen to, like, a podcast, like, "How to change your life," it's not a 2-minute thing, or not even a half
No.
an hour, like, you just now summarized it in, like, 10 minutes, but it wasn't 10 minutes, it was 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
And even, like you said, like, looking back is also, like, um because you have had the experiences. It's not because in 10 minutes he was like, "Well, now I'm going to go exercise and change my life and woohoo, look at me." But it's really that building it up and like getting better and better at it. And a few episodes back, we also talked about this thing where you decide to change, but then you get all these voices from the world like, okay, so I don't feel so good now, but I'm a man, so I still have to show up and maybe I can do exercise so I get more muscles or whatever and then feel better.
Mhm.
But that's not who you are necessarily inside. And I think that also came back in your story, like how when you try to even look for help, there's still this thought in your head, like, oh, but I have to be some way, or I have to do it this way because I just cannot allow to go in there. Like, do you?
Yeah, I think that happened to me that those 2 years before when I was thinking about the medication thing. Because I think I played with the idea, oh, maybe I do need help, but I automatically put up this stop sign, say no medications. I don't want to do medications. So that stopped me, and I'm like, and so I tried the opposite of just trying to fix it myself. But you're certainly right. I think, and I was introduced through my studies. Like I'd never really been into Tony Robbins. Never heard much about him. But then someone said to me one of his quotes, and I love his quote because I think it really does reflect the moment when someone, particularly a guy, decides, yes, I will do therapy or go and talk to someone at least. And it doesn't have to be therapy; it could be their friend or family member. And it says change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And I just love it because it's that moment inside where you go, yep, if I stay the same, if I keep drinking, if I keep hurting relationships, if I keep, eating rubbish, if I keep just trying to figure it out in my head, get angry, maybe get violent in some cases, if I keep doing that, then nothing would ever change. Like I'll just keep hurting. And so it's actually less painful for me to just go and talk to someone, whether it's a friend, a family member, a doctor, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever it is, just start offloading some of this stuff and then getting techniques on how to cope with it longer term as well. And I think that Tony Robbins quote, I think sums that up perfectly, is that insight moment, that moment of insight or self-reflection where you go, yep, how I'm showing up is not how I want to be.
Yeah. Oh, I really love that. Yeah, that's a really valuable one as well. And I was just thinking, it's also about this moment where you go, um, totally spaced out for a second. I'm like still thinking about Tony Robbins there. Where you realize that, oh, this is not who I am. This is not what I want. And yes, the exercise was cool, or like, I don't know, go meditate more or do this more, what people tell you to do. They work on the short term, but it's not coming
Hmm.
from inside. It's not your change, it's not your path, it's someone else's. And then when you realize like, oh, yeah, this is not what I want. Oh, this is not my path, and this hurts. Like, even if you feel like for a second good, the next day you go back, then you realize, oh
Hmm.
yeah, ow. And I think,
Yeah.
like, on the long term, these transformations are painful. Because when you go to the gym, yes, the next day you feel good, but it's not the long term result that you actually are craving inside. It's more like pushing it more
Yeah.
away. And
Yeah, I kind of reflect on them as band-aid fixes. And
mm,
like and drinking is a classic one. So in Australia we have a huge drinking culture. And so from 16 upwards you start to drink. 18 is a legal age to actually buy alcohol and drink alcohol here. And so from a very young age, yeah, a lot of Australians, they do drink. And what I'm having these discussions with on a lot of different podcasts is around priorities, and what are the priorities around your health and well-being. And so what a lot of people would do, and myself included, was to numb the pain or to slow down the racing thoughts. It might be rewarding yourself with a big night out with your friends down at the local pub or club or cafe, restaurant, whatever it is. Have a lot of drink and have some good food and have a good time. And in the moment, you're like, yeah, this is awesome. I feel great. But then you wake up the next morning and the band-aid's fallen off and you're back where you were. Or it's the same with exercise. Like unless you do more than just the exercise, like you do the food thing, sleeping well, you set some good healthy goals, maybe cutting out drinking or whatever. As you said, like you feel great in the moment, but unless you do more work around the edges as well, and not just this one band-aid fix, it's not going to go much further than, yeah, maybe a few extra muscles, or maybe you're a bit sore or whatever, and but yeah, you're not going to actually address the underlying things inside that's what's going on. And so in this space, I often reflect, like, if you and your friends were going out on a big night out, that, slapping on that band-aid, big night out, lots of alcohol, lots of good food, dancing or whatever, you might spend, and you might even buy new clothes, go out, do your hair, you might drop $500 on a night out, and you'll go, yeah, this is awesome, we just had an amazing time. But that $500, and that's only a short-term fix, but that $500 could actually get you some sessions with a psychologist or a counselor, and not only give you the short term fix of getting stuff off your chest, but more longer term fixes of discovering who you are as a person, who you want to be, or maybe addressing getting some tools and tricks about how to manage OCD or anxiety or depression, or anything like that, or even getting like a script for medication that can give you long term benefits for your mental health and well being. And it all comes down to priorities. What are you willing to prioritize in your life? Is it a good night out, or is it long term health and well being that actually helps you live the life you've always wanted to live, not the one you've seen on TV and go, oh, I wish I had that life, or seen on social media and go, I wish I had that life. Go out and get it. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah. And what I also noticed in the beginning when I started coaching, I would offer like single sessions as well, and I only do like bundle things because people would come to me and then, like, you rip off a band-aid and then you go, oh, okay, so this is this. And but how do I fix it? And then you say, well, let's start talking about it. And then people start talking and then they go, okay, so I go home and then I meditate and it will be all fixed. And you just put the band-aid back on. And then they go home and they're like, you changed my life, Katie. And I'm like, I think I'll see you in a month. And then, in a month, they're like, yeah, I don't think it worked. And I'm like, well, because we didn't go deep down. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people do that with like, there are like so many podcasts and like videos and social media and everything where you can just like, read like two lines of like, I don't know, go walk more in nature. And then you go, I'm going to walk more in nature. And then it's just a temporary thing and it's not the long term thing. And
I think Twitter's caused that. So we only can digest anything in 25 words or less, or something like that now. And when we're opting away from books to get like the little headline things that fix us, you're right. And we're looking for those top 5 things that I can do today to fix myself, or whatever. But it's a long term game that can have an amazing impact if you just commit to the cause. It's like study. It's like going to study at university. Like, you don't get your degree on the first day or after the first week. You've got to do some hard work, and it's going to take you a few years, but eventually you get there and you've accomplished something amazing. And also you've learned a whole lot of information about yourself, but also the world around you as well. And it's the same with working on your mental health or relationships or career changes, whatever it is. It's not just about mental illness and that we can talk about, but yeah, it's whatever it is that's getting you down in life. Could be stress, could be anxiety, could be climate change. I'm really excited about discussions in climate change because I'm a firm believer. I'm not sure about you. My government's not such a firm believer in climate change. But yeah, just anything in the world. And if you set your mind to the long term, that's when you'll get those big aha moments for yourself, and stop, going for the band-aid fixes.
Yeah. And I think I mean, it's valuable for everyone, but I think especially men, because you're like, I cannot have these emotions. I cannot have a mental health crisis, or I cannot have a life crisis because I have to provide for my family. I have to be strong. I have to be the man.
Hmm.
I have to just man up. And I feel like there's that often that need for like a quick fix, because otherwise it also has to become a part of your identity. Like what I often do in my coaching, this shitty thing happened and you want to go there, but this journey is a part of you now. We're not going
Mm,
to say that happened, we fixed it, now we move on and we forget about it. It's a journey. And
yeah.
that's really hard sometimes for people to like internalize the thing instead of go like, so I have this emotion, Katie, take it away. Thank you, bye bye.
And a
And
lot of people get worried about getting diagnosed with a mental illness because I think it's a label and I think it's a box that they're put into. But I see it as an opportunity to learn about yourself. Like, I didn't know what obsessive compulsive disorder was until I was diagnosed with it. And then I could go, okay, I still don't know what it is, but I'm going to do some research on it and learn about it and find out, okay, this is, I've got this overwhelming need for safety and security. This is causing my obsessive thoughts and my compulsive behaviors as well. And this is how I can work on that. This is the kind of therapy I need for that. I'm going to research about what therapies work as well. And so you're right. It becomes part of the journey. And then so I think, knowledge is power. The more we can inform ourselves and educate ourselves on the situation, whether it's a mental illness or relationship issue or work issue or whatever it is, then we can be more empowered to take good, decisive action that's healthy as well. We're not going to resort to the quick fix alcohol hit or drugs or partying or dangerous sex or whatever people are into. We're actually going to opt for the stuff that's informed by evidence and backed by different therapists, and there's different strategies. And I guess at the same time is we can also identify different things that work for us. So just because talk therapy might work for me, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And so it's finding things like, it could be meditation, it could be working with animals. There's like a lot of equine therapy is a really big one at the moment, like working with horses, and just the calming nature of working with animals is fantastic. You've got art therapy, music therapy, you've got all sorts of different therapies that you can try. I've tried heaps of different ones, and it's just finding the ones that work for you. But it all starts with identifying what the issue is in the first place, and you're not going to do that unless you start talking.
yeah, yeah. So I see the little bling bling in my corner. I always get very distracted at the end. Just being very honest here. So but it is kind of time to wrap it up. And I just want to give you now a little bit of space to share how people could reach out to you or work with you if they're interested to get more in touch with you.
Yeah, love to. So thanks so much. I mean, thanks for starters for having me on the show. I really love having these discussions, and yeah, I've been really excited to come on your show, and thank you for the work that you're doing and holding space for people like me to talk about their transformations. It's really appreciated. But if people want to touch base with me, I've got my website, which is www.mindful-men.com.au. And if you're in Australia and you're listening to this, you can access my therapy services. So I do that on telehealth, which is like a Zoom call, or you can do it in person with me in Queensland Sunshine Coast. But if you're not in Australia, but you still want to engage in what I do, I've got the Mindful Men podcast, where I have very similar discussions to this with people all over the world about all sorts of different weird and wonderful things. A lot of it's mental health, but some of it's parenting, some of it's social work, because I'm a social worker as well. But we just dive deep into different stuff, because I think by doing that, it can help guys to be mindful of who they are and how they can grow and how they're showing up in the world. So the Mindful Men podcast is a free, accessible resource that you can get through the website, but you can just type it into Google as well. And if you go to the website, I've also got Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those, all from the website. You can access them.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And people can also find it all like above, below, somewhere. There's a link around
Yeah.
this video or listening thing, it's always somewhere else. But the links are also in the description, so they can reach out to you. And yeah, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your story, for maybe hopefully planting some seeds in people and opening
Yes.
up their hearts and their emotions. It was really lovely to talk to you. And yeah, I think this is the end, even though I could talk to you forever. A lot more about this topic.
Well, I'm happy to come on more, and share deeper insights into OCD, depression, anxiety, whatever it is. But yeah, as I said, thanks again for having me, and I've really enjoyed our chat.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Bye bye.